Alrighty, Yana. Another week, another exploration of what we have been working on with AI for the past week. And today, it's my pleasure to interview you because your journey with AI is super interesting. You went from being a product person, like a product owner, to actually building stuff on your own. So, how did this happen? Suddenly, you don't need me, the designer. You don't need Casper, the developer. You're a strong and independent product owner.
That's right. That's right. AI empowered me. It's been incredible for me to experience the ability to not just have the ideas, but make the ideas come true. It's complete game changer. I feel like my creativity is off the charts lately. I have so many ideas. I feel unleashed because before I was so limited as a product person with strong opinions on the product, how it should look and feel and work, but no skills to make it happen. I was at the mercy of you guys to make it happen for me. Not only that, but I didn't really have effective ways to communicate my ideas. I just knew when it feels wrong and had an idea of how it should be. As a product person, I sit on the intersection between the customers and the product. So I get a lot of feedback and I see where people come from. But oftentimes I cannot make their suggestions for improvements happen, although I agree with them.
Yeah.
So I remember back in the days when we were running our first company swipes, and I started drawing these mock-ups, if you remember, Paint.
I remember.
So I will screenshot something, I will start drawing with Paint, and I acquired math skills in Paint, and I could pretty much alter any screenshot to fit the exact idea that I had. And it was just like this urge to visualize things and not be dependent on you guys for each and every task. And then I upgraded my skills years later with Figma when I started taking over the marketing assets. Because instead of waiting on you, I could recycle previous good work you've done in other contexts. I can take the elements, make some patchwork together. Yes, it's not perfect. Yes, it wasn't exactly as good as if you did it, but it was there and it was done. And then I had AI. So I could vibe code an idea and concept. And this is actually how I got started last year. There was a request from one of our enterprise clients for a feature we didn't have. And we also didn't have an idea of how it should work exactly. So we needed a prototype, but it was not high on the priority list compared to other ongoing activities. It was high on my priority list. And I just felt, okay, now I can create that prototype with Lullable. And after a few hours of playing around with it, I had the prototype. We were on a meeting. They loved it. And there was this moment of, okay, but now what? I have the prototype. Casper, somebody else on the development team can make it happen, but it's still a dependency that had to be resolved. Like I could not proceed with satisfying the needs of that account on my own. I worked within this limitation for a few more months. And by the end of the year, I was getting really tired to be in a position of always negotiating my priorities against somebody else's priorities. And I was listening to this podcast. I think it was on the CEO Diaries, and I think it was with Tony Robbins, where he said, well, if you're excited about something, you gotta go and do it. It's not enough to talk about.
Yeah.
And AI is an incredible opportunity for you to get your hands on things and you actually do them. And it was a very straightforward advice. It was very simple. We've heard it billions of times. I could give this advice myself to anybody. But I realized that I wasn't doing it myself. I was still approaching the work from this middle layer position where I'm gonna gather the feedback, get the prototype ready, but then wait until somebody that was capable of doing it took over.
Mm.
And then I was like, I'm sick and tired of waiting. No more waiting for me. I want to get my hands dirty. I want to make this happen. And then I started coding the features. And since then, I've shipped like probably 6, 7 different features that were on the roadmap since forever. And I rarely ask for any feedback anymore from anybody or permission to do so. I just do it. And then I actually have work done that I can show to Casper, for example, for revision. And then it's much easier to improve things. But this change of position, as you said, from a product owner to a product builder, has been tremendous for me because as a founder, I have an objective, which is satisfy the customers. This is my highest ultimate goal. So the product is my means to an end. It's my instrument to achieve that goal. And now that I'm actually in charge or fully able to work with that tool, I'm able to contribute in a much more meaningful way. I feel truly empowered. It's been amazing, amazing, amazing. I'm just hyped all the time. Every day I'm just like, what am I gonna build
I mean,
today?
technically, for the past year, you've been the one that has been shipping most improvements on the product. It's not Casper, who has his hands busy with so many other things, and it hasn't been me. It's been you shipping production ready features that are tightly related with customer feedback and solving customer problems. And it has been amazing, like to see this on the sideline. So for somebody that has never touched an AI coding tool, because what you said in the beginning is that you've been using Lovable like to make a few prototypes, but here we're talking about our actual code base and our actual product and you creating features there. For somebody that has never done this, how do you do it? Like me through the setup, walk me through the way that you interact with the AI. So when you get one feature request, how do you make it into reality?
Got it. All right. So, as a disclaimer, as we always do in our episodes, we are founders. We have our hands on everything, but we are not specific experts in the coding part. Casper created this connection between our code base and Cloud Call and with restricted permissions. So I'm essentially able to work on the on the code base, but I'm only shipping things that are in staging. I can test them. I can validate that their work is intended, and I can submit them for approval. I'm not able to do any changes and essentially damage to the live environment, which is much needed. Especially work with a rookie in development that is AI assisted. We connected essentially Cloud Code to the code base, and I use a tool called Warp. I'll show you. It does not look like anything, but it has the context of the code base from question
Yeah.
based. And then I give it a ticket here. Recently, I was working on including images in the LLM from Slack. So question based is an AI agent that works within Slack and uses company information to automatically respond to questions in channels. One of the things that has been requested again and again is the ability to take into consideration image from Slack.
To basically ask a question by sending a screenshot.
We often work with customers who need support in channels, and people will ask questions like, hey, an employee is asking about our reimbursement policy, is this covered? And they're going to screenshot some information. But the AI doesn't take the context within the screenshot. It will essentially not be able to respond in any capacity to the question, or it will respond very vaguely, I think. Here, I managed to get it to take into account. So you see that I have spent $50 on a new keyboard. Is that covered? And I have connected to the agent's knowledge. I have created a document where it says receipts are required for $24 and above. And then the agent essentially takes into account that this one is $50. So then it will say, yes, this reimbursement is covered.
Brilliant.
It knows it's $50 and it takes the two things into account: the context from the message, the context from the image, and the context from the document that it has access to provide an instant answer to a question. Otherwise, if it doesn't have a context from the image, it will be simply saying things like, I don't see what you're seeing, or it will say, can you refer to it again, and things like that. So it took me a while. You can see I was playing a lot with it to get it to that level. So the way I approached it is I get the Claude to work.
So Code is your coding agent in this context.
Yes. So I always first start with, hey, let's discuss. I have this request from a customer. How would we approach it? And then it starts talking to me about it. And I spent probably a few back and forths. It's honestly really good at giving options. And I feed it context as I figure out that it needs more information. In that case, in order to achieve something like that, I needed to expand the scope of what our Slack app was allowed to do. So we are a Slack approved vendor that is trading through their marketplace. This is where a lot of people find us from. And in order to be able to be there in this approved vendor with high credibility, we need to comply with a lot of requirements from Slack themselves. And one of the requirements is which scopes you are allowed to use and in what capacity you need to document and be tested against these permissions so that the vendors who are in Slack are not in any way misusing the data of the customers. So I needed to feed the agent the Slack documentation for developers and say, hey, I need you to be compliant with requirements there in order to be able to launch that feature. And then he discovered that I needed a new scope within our app to be implemented. So I'm submitting up. So I went around and I said, hey, this is the requirements that I see here. What am I missing to be compliant? And Cloud Code goes into our code base. It analyzes what we are currently compliant for and what we need to expand for in order to cover cover the files essentially to be integrated into the LLM. And then it told me, hey, you need a new scope, you need to submit an app approval. So this feature actually ended up becoming a bigger feature, not because it took long to build. As you see, I got it within a couple of hours to work, but it's a bigger feature because I need to submit a new app for approval in the Slack marketplace to be able to use that scope. So before I can launch that feature to our customers and they're able to use it, we need to get this approval through Slack. So this all was figured out through Cloud Code. It told me what I need to do to be compliant. I did feed it the code base information, the requirements information, the customer feedback, and through the conversational building, we were able to finalize that feature.
Can you show how like you would initiate like a conversation like this? Let's say that like there's some feature on the backlog that you would start working. Like what would be like that initial message that would initiate like that conversation to have it as a partner? It would be just like interesting like to see.
So first of I'm gonna create like a linear ticket for traceability of our work and changes. This is important, especially important for compliant vendors like ours that are undergoing audits. Take that one. I'm just gonna create an idea within our sprint and saying, hey, I'm gonna create a ticket, describe what my goal is, and generate my ticket. And get it started. So I'm just gonna say we're gonna work on this new ticket. I always forget that this is a terminal and it doesn't work like a work editor.
It's this is the hardcore stuff. My dad is spending most of his time on a computer inside the terminal.
Yeah, you have been exposed to it since a kid, and it's so funny that you became a designer. Your dad is a system admin, but now with AI, you start living his life.
Sooner or later, like you know, we become our parents. Like I thought that I would never have to deal with terminal, but now actually I love terminal. I prefer the terminal experience over like the desktop AI cloud app.
You see, you've been brainwashed since a kid. You can't escape your conditioning.
No.
And this is what I know by my parents as well. They have always worked in these environments of project work, and everything was documented heavily. And I, coming from the startup world, I thought, oh my God, like it's so slow, it's much work unnecessarily, and so on. And now I find myself running a startup that is compliantly working under SOC 2, that is undergoing audits, that is serving big enterprise customers. So I'm constantly producing audit reports and so I'm also becoming my parent.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable. All right. So I say my goal is to inject, for example, new unanswered questions to Slack Canvas. How can I approach this? Let's discuss. It's really important to say that we're discussing because otherwise it can quickly go into action mode. And here I'm looking to understand based on my code base what are my options to get this work done. And it will essentially go through the code base and start simply talking with me about it. It will oftentimes give me ABC approach and it will take into account the implications for the customers and it will take me with option A, you're cutting corners and this is how it's gonna impact customers because it's not gonna take into account their existing, for example, unanswered question tracker. It will duplicate content, but it's gonna be shipped very fast. In option B, you're completely creating this new functionality that's overwriting your existing functionality. This will take a while because you need to deprecate the old feature and so on. So it starts showing me what are the implications of the different paths and it will ask me questions. I'm prompting it to ask me questions and it is prompted in its system request, the one that we have put into Claude to always interview us.
Yep.
So that we can deepen the discussion. And then it will say, hey, but what is Slack Canvas? Or if it didn't find it on the internet, I'm going to provide the documentation for it. I'm going to provide what are the existing features that I'm thinking it should impact. And we're just going to go discuss it. And it's really, really amazing because the actual work is frequently very little. The discussion is what takes the longest time.
Basically, right now, what is happening is that it's loading up in this discussion and in this moment, like it's loading up the context it needs in order to help you make these decisions. And through this discussion that you're gonna have, it will have the right amount of context and information to start implementing this into the code base.
Yes, exactly. So you see what it did here, exactly as I was saying. It's gonna give me option A with pros and cons. It's gonna give me option B. It's gonna give me option C. And then it's gonna ask me questions about them. Hey, which canvas are you talking about? Are you talking about something on your end, or are you talking about the Slack functionality of Canvas? I need to kind of teach it with Canvas. What am I intending to do? Which type of questions do I mean when I say unanswered questions? And so on. So I can go ahead and evaluate these options and say, hey, I'm leaning towards option A, and these are the answers to the questions. Or I can just respond to the question, say, reevaluate the options you suggested to tell me what are the new pros and cons you find for each one of them. And yeah, it's a very fun way to work with it. Obviously, it has its downsides if that it's very confident. So, but we'll frequently say, hey, I did that. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, I literally am testing it and you did not change what you said you would change. And then it says, sorry, give me a second. Well, now I did it. And then you go ahead and you test it and it didn't do it. And oftentimes it's because it gets lost in some loop and you have to figure out what's going on. Sometimes you have to feed it, like you have to test it in your staging environment and feed it the logs, give it access to the logs of the data from AWS, because it actually doesn't have eyes to see what you're seeing. And it will programmatically think that it did it, but it doesn't get this feedback that this is not realized, changed. So I need to enable it with the logs to actually see its performance, because it's better at detecting errors. Or sometimes, even for small things like design changes, it's terrible at making them. If I say the loader seems off, it's really not making a full circle, it just gets jammed to the halfway. It says, oh, I fixed it. And then you deploy the changes, you test again, and you're like, no, you really didn't. And this is where it helps to make a small video, record a video of what it does, and then send it to it and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing, because it doesn't have eyes. I mean, it acts as all knowing and almighty, but it actually doesn't have eyes to see these changes. And then it's like, okay, if you say reduce the size of the icon with a few pixels and so on, it says, yes, I did it, but then it actually changed the color of the icon out of nowhere. So all these design things, I mean, this is getting into your realm of things. It's really hard to get it to do design and good design, because it has no eyes, it has no judgment of what good and bad is. And sometimes it just code creeps, and although you ask it for a tiny change of reduce with 1 pixel, it will say, yes, I did that, but then also change the color or the font or whatsoever. It's very optimistic, very eager to prove itself.
So now you have like experience in this, and like it seems that you're confident in navigating this, and you're also aware of what are the shortcomings and where it excels at. Like for somebody that has been in your shoes and has product experience or has ideas of building products, what would be your advice? Like how to get started with this? Because even for myself, it was intimidating at first when I saw this black screen and this cold looking text that is appearing. What would be like a first baby step for somebody like that to get their taste in this?
We always talk about the importance of curiosity. As a product manager, go ahead and be annoying and ask for this level of access to your development team and say, hey, I want you to set this up for me. I want to be able to make changes in the staging environment, that test them, and create essentially these prototypes of the features that I need. And once you have that access, you're really without limits. Like you can go, it's a playground essentially at your fingertips to execute on any of the backlog ideas that are hanging around in your Jira, in your linear. And although they might be subject to further changes from your dev team, So like you're taking away their job. In my case, I'm more like one man show at this moment of time. But in the case when you are a team, you can visualize your ideas way better. You could be better, more effective communicator and product manager because you can actually build within the code base prototypes of how features should work, which would speed up their development so much. So go ahead, ask, and don't give up until developers have created this playground field for you, and then just be curious and play around. Take tickets and smash them one by one.
Here, folks. Take tickets and smash them one by one. Yana, thank you so much for walking us through this setup. And I really believe that AI is enabling us to do more rather than making us obsolete. And you're the perfect example. You were limited before, but now because all of us are acting on so many of our ideas, suddenly like there was no capacity for doing the things that were important for you, and you're part of the business, which is building for the customers. So this has helped you actually close deals. So as a founder, you're also doing sales, and it has helped you close deals because now with confidence you can promise to new lead whether you can build something or not.
Exactly. I had a case like that a couple of weeks ago where a person wasn't able to get the current setup to work for their use case. And I said, hey, just give me a little bit of time. And then I acted on their feedback. And within 2 days, we had the implementation done. And then I could follow up on that lead and say, hey, this actually implements. So now you can use it exactly as you intended, because our agent, and the reason why question base is such a good tool on the market and is getting this recognition is because it's a highly customizable agent. We work with various use cases within enterprises, and really it has hundreds of settings for people to play around with and set it up to work exactly as they want for their specific use case. But that also requires that we take into consideration all these um, requests and we act on them as fast as we can. So now I feel super enabled that I can live up to that promise.
Thank you so much, Yana, for sharing all this.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
See you next week.